Good afternoon, welcome back to our thought for the day. It's lovely to have you with us again. Every day we're trying to put out little thoughts and just work our way through some of what the Bible might be saying as well. And this week's a really special week. It is of course Passion Week. It's the week before Easter, and it's the week where we're just going to get ourselves ready for Good Friday this week and then followed by Easter Sunday. And what we're going to do this week with our thoughts for the day is we're just going to work our way through some of the key events leading up to the crucifixion of Jesus, and then of course his resurrection on Sunday morning. So our thoughts for the day are going to follow the events of Jesus leading up to his crucifixion. Yesterday at church we talked through Palm Sunday and what an amazing moment that was, and just want to cast our minds back to that this afternoon, because what an amazing moment that must have been. Jesus' disciples have been following him for 3 years, have seen him do all manner of amazing things, heal the sick, raise the dead, stand up against injustice and speak a truth about God that was unrivaled. And as they walk towards Jerusalem and they get to Bethany by the Mount of Olives, Jesus calls two of his disciples to go and get a donkey for him. A donkey that was going to play a very special part in what was about to unfold. Those two disciples came back with that donkey and they sat Jesus upon it. His disciples surely would have understood the weight of history upon their shoulders as Jesus deliberately fulfilled that promise and that prophecy from Zechariah chapter 9 about the Messiah, the King, riding into Jerusalem on a donkey. Can you imagine what it must have felt like and sounded like as they went down into Jerusalem, as they began to be filled with the excitement and the passion of seeing this prophesied King from the Old Testament finally arrived? I imagine they would have been filled with a real sense of privilege of being the people that witnessed a centuries-old prophecy finally come true. I remember watching the film Jesus of Nazareth and watching them replay this scene, act it out, and it's dusty, it's loud, it's frenetic, there's yelling, there's shouting, there's huge crowds of people. In my mind's eye, I can almost hear the cracking of branches as palm branches are ripped from every available tree, as people sing and shout at the top of their voice, Hosanna. And you can imagine the throng of people growing and growing and growing, and they finally enter Jerusalem. And then the tension becomes real as those religious leaders grumble and moan and tell Jesus to be quiet. And yet you get a sense of the tension that's coming, that's going to unfold across Passion Week. But of course, as we said yesterday, Jesus glances around and then goes home. He goes back to the Mount of Olives, back to Bethany to sleep. But now it's Monday. He goes back with his disciples again to Jerusalem, not this time on a donkey with crowds, although the crowds soon meet him in Jerusalem. This time he walks in. He walks in with his disciples, and rather than look around, there's a very different demeanour to Jesus. Now he is filled with a zeal, a righteous anger at the injustice that's happening in the temple. As Jesus enters the temple courts, he sees the stalls and the moneylenders, people meant to be there to help people worship God. They would have been selling animals and cattle for the sacrifice, meant to sell them to people who had travelled for miles and miles and miles to take part in the Passover festival. There were people there to change up money so they could give financially to the temple. And Jesus witnessed them ripping people off, ripping off the poor as they came to worship his Father in his Father's house. And what a moment it must have been for his disciples to watch this Jesus suddenly grab these tables and these stools and throw them over and drive these money lenders out, push them away, to get consumed with zeal. He begins to shout, "My Father's house is to be a house of prayer, and you have made it a den of robbers." I wonder what the disciples would have taken away from that moment. What a different picture of Jesus that we often give ourselves, or often we're presented with. We often like the nice, gentle Jesus, the Jesus who doesn't say boo to a goose. But in this story, on Easter Monday, we see a Jesus who turns tables of injustice over, a Jesus who is passionate, who is strong, who is powerful, who is consumed with a holy zeal for what is right and what is holy, and the honour of his Father, and the blessing and the help of the poor and the needy. I wonder, as those disciples made their way back out, as they made their way to bed that night, what would have gone through their minds? I wonder if they would have been struck by this slightly different, challenging view, this new characteristic of Jesus. Would they have thought to themselves, When was the last time I turned the tables of injustice over? When was the last time I was passionate for what was right? And today, that's something we should think about. Are we people who glibly let injustice rule our world? Are we people that don't get exercised about anything that's wrong? Do we find ourselves just saying, well, that's just the way life is? Or do we look at the way the world should be and see where it isn't and turn those tables over until it is what it is? The Jesus we worship at Easter is a conquering Jesus, a Jesus who came to take darkness on face to face and defeat it. We as Christians are to be people who do the same. Where is there injustice in the life that you live? Where are the people that rip off the needy and the vulnerable? Where are those who take the truths of God and twist them? Maybe this week it's time to say to God, here I am. I want to fight for you. I'm going to stand for what's right, no matter the cost. God calls his people to be strong and to fight for the light. What a thought to have, especially when we have the cross in the shadow of all of this, where Jesus will fight the ultimate battle and be victorious, overturning the table of death itself. What Jesus do you follow? God bless. See you tomorrow.